So, hey guys, today we're going to be talking about negate effects, and specifically how we could make them a little bit more interesting and nuanced. But the issue with this is it would make the game harder for newer players, but well, that we're just going to talk about how interesting the interactions would be with this. So, if we were to just go over the effect of drill beam, well, the important thing essentially is uh, after you reveal a card, you target a face up card on the field, negate its effects, and if you do, banish it. So the important thing here that I want to really highlight here is the order. And this would apply to something uh, even more so like a Baron than the Drill Beam. Actually, Drill Beam, it wouldn't really matter. So if Drill Beam's order was actually instead banish that monster and or banish that card and then negate, then it wouldn't really change much about the card because if I were to send the card somewhere, since this card targets, it wouldn't really change much here because yeah, it's no longer on the field, so being not targetable means it can't be banished by a drill beam, let alone negated. Like it doesn't matter the order for this. No, the interaction remains the same. But if we have a card like, for example, Baron de Fleur, which has the effect to specifically negate the card, then destroy it. But if we were to flip this card, then there's the idea of if we were to send the card that Baron is attempting to negate, it would no longer be able to negate the card because it must then destroy and then negate in that order. So if we were to banish our own card, remove it from the field by any means, then Baron would no longer be able to negate, which I think is kind of interesting. Because if we were to have a forbidden droplet, that means we could get even more mileage out of this. So if we have, for example, let's say our opponent has a Borreload Savage plus a Baron, and that's their end board. It just happens to be their end board. Don't worry about it too much. And we'll normal summon a monster like, I don't know, we'll go with Etherbro. Sure. So we normal summon Etherbro, chain link 1 Etherbro effect to set a card, and then we have chain link 2 Baron to negate. Chain link 3 Forbidden Droplet, removing the Etherbro off the field, and then Forbidden Droplet is going to most likely negate the Borreload Savage. So if you do not negate with the Borreload Savage, this droplet, it will take off all of your counters, I believe. That's how this works, I think. But even if not, like, no matter what happens, you're not activating Borreload Savage for the rest of this turn, regardless. And Etherbro will still resolve. Whereas if we have what we have right now, then we would need to send an additional card aside from Etherbro to make sure it still resolves by negating the Baron with a different card. And yeah, that's pretty much how it works, I guess. But I guess if we do specifically Droplets and Etherbro, you can't respond with monsters either way to Forbidden Droplet. So that's something. But alright. This also makes just certain other cards a little bit better or more interesting just because of how all this stuff potentially could work. So, for example, with Cyframe Gear Gamma, we would also be able to outplay this in the same kind of way. So let's see. If I want to remove a card, in this case, as a quick effect, we could, well, now Droplet won't work because Gamma's not on the field yet. So instead, here we could do like, let's see, where is it? My blindness is seriously kicking in today. Aha. you could use Goblin Biker Grand Breakout to tribute a Thurberl this time, and that would get it off the field, and then Gamma would no longer negate the monster. Our opponent would still special summon the Gamma because of the ordering, so it'd be like special summon Gamma, attempt to destroy, can't destroy because the cards in the graveyard, and for some reason cards on the graveyard are not destroyed, and then, well, they can't be destroyed, you know? And then Gamma would not be able to negate if it worked in that order. And if we were to actually go with instead, so that this is interesting as well, cards that would do this, but it would be something like a Vanish negate. So I believe Allied Code Talker has this effect. Let's check. I believe this one's Vanish negate. Yeah, and if you do, banish that card. So if we do different sequencing, this would allow cards like Vanquish Soul. Like this entire deck would be a bit of a step up. So if we have Vanquish Soul Rosin versus Cypher Gear Gamma, we can go Chainlink 1, Rosin to add, and then Chainlink 2, Heavy Border. We'll put Rosin in the hand, and because it changed location, I have no idea why this works like this. It will not be destroyed by like a Baron, nor will it be destroyed by Gamma. Will it be banished in the hand by like an Ally Code Talker at Ignister? I suppose not, because it location changed. So that would be a little bit more interesting in the sense that this allows you ways to play around negates just a little bit better if they are tied with destruction effects. Specifically destruction effect first and then negate, or just some sort of removal effect, basically, right? If the card like well, this card just pisses me off a little bit because of how this works way too advantageously for the player that controls the card. But with Rukelos here, you have the effect of when your opponent activates a card or effect that includes an effect that special summons a monster or monster's quick effect, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. Then send one tier link card from your hand or face of field to the graveyard. So this is kind of like the trade-off, or kind of like the cost for the card, but it's put way at the back of the card, which is just like an absolute sin. And this is a mandatory effect too, except because if you did not destroy that card, you know, you don't have to send anything. This is relevant because the idea with Rukelos is that it should be kind of like 2 special summon negates. So this is already working kind of flawed, in my opinion. So you have the effect of, if this fusion summon card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can special summon this card. So I guess like if you only control a Rukelos, it's only kind of supposed to be 2 monster special summon negates, right? So that'd be like Rukelos tributes itself, Rukelos special summons it back, itself back, and then next turn you can Rukelos effect send itself one more time, and then that should be the end of it, unless you have like a Tearlament card to send from your hand or face of field to the graveyard, right? Which if you do, fair enough, but you don't have to send because the card had to be destroyed. So that would be like, well, if the card were not destroyed, actually. So that would be like a card in the graveyard attempting to activate. And if that card gets negated, you can't really destroy cards in the graveyard. You can't destroy banish cards either. So essentially, you get to negate without kind of paying the cost here. I mean, it's not like a literal cost, but it's a mandatory effect that you no longer have to do. This would be like if Drill Beam, you could just activate Drill Beam and then just set it straight back on the field. And then activate it again the immediate next turn, which is a bit ridiculous, in my opinion. But, you know, just the actual order of effects is pretty important here. Honestly, I feel like with Rukelos, you should still have the negate effect and the destroy effect. I guess like that's like fine in general, but if it interacts like this, you should just remove the destroy effect altogether and just have it just do the send immediately if you do the negate. Like, Why do we have this destroyed line here? I think that's just dumb, really. So yeah, ordering really matters because cards attempt to resolve as much as possible, but then like if something doesn't happen, the rest of the effect doesn't happen either. So for example, let's see, with Nibiru, this one's actually really jank. If you're not able to do the effect uh over here, so this would be special summoning a token. So let's assume my opponent has special summoned like 50 times, but they control token collector, then I cannot summon Nibiru. Despite the order of Nibiru resolving being wipe the board and then special summon a token, and also I guess it technically special summons itself as well, we wouldn't be able to resolve Nibiru, would we? Now that I think about it, if your board is completely filled with monsters and you technically do not have a zone to special summon Nibiru, can we still resolve Nibiru then? Because technically there's no space to summon Nibiru, despite technically the effect contributing everything else off the field first and then special summoning Nibiru. Is Nibiru resolvable then? And if so, why can't we resolve Nibiru then against an effect that prevents you from summoning a token? Kinda got that feeling if that is the case, and that is how it works. That's just mad jank. And with Nibiru working like that, it makes me wonder some things, honestly. So we have Jekyll Bolin, for example, which has this effect. During your opponent's main phase quick effect, you can target one zombie monster in either graveyard, special summon that monster, but banish it when it leaves the field. Then banish this face-up card until the end phase. So this works kind of as expected. So if I do not have an open zone, I can't use Jekyll Bolin effect. So Jekyll Bolin banishes itself as the last action, but the first action is to do the reborn. So you require like a certain amount of zones to resolve Jekyll Bolin. But if your zone gets filled up before Jekyll Bolin returns, Jekyll Bolin just goes to the graveyard. I think everything kind of goes to the graveyard if it can't actually really summon itself. But which is like a whole different topic, I guess, to an extent. Do cards end up like fizzling out actually? So like if we have Branded Fusion, when do the cards for Branded Fusion get sent? During resolution of the card. Okay. So if we were to activate Branded Fusion and our opponent gives us a monster or something like that and we no longer have the zones for Branded Fusion for whatever reason, maybe they're using up both extra monster zones as well. And then they just clog up all of our zones with like, I don't know, let's say Ojama Trio or something. Then Branded Fusion, it doesn't even attempt to summon the monster, I believe, right? No, wait. Using two monsters from your hand, deck, or field as material. Potentially, you can actually still summon then. Because you can potentially use, well, it doesn't have to necessarily be Ojometry, but technically, you can use monsters from your field. So, even if my zones were all clogged, I think Branded Fusion is legally resolvable then. Because it allows you to use from your field. Wow, I'm not sure how I feel about this, but it is how it works, I guess. And it is what it is. And, you know, I think, like, these cards existing as they do, as of currently, is fine. I just think it'd be somewhat more interesting if we had a new archetype that did a different order of just simply destroy then negate. So there's counterplay to it. And, you know, I'm sure the player playing whatever this deck would be probably has some options as well, or some game plan if your opponent avoided your negate, which I think is kind of an interesting concept. It could also introduce more like bad matchups and good matchups for certain decks and archetypes potentially if we did kind of have this kind of thing, but right now we're pretty standardized to like negate and then removal effect, and this simplifies things a lot. And well, there's ruling stuff and whatnot that would be annoying, I guess, outside of simulators. So that's probably a thing, and it's just another thing to keep track of technically, which might be hard for new players. So a little bit of mixed feelings on that, but still would like to see a card effects kind of like this. And off the top of my head, I can't think of anything that does the order of removal and then negate. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Well, actually, there's one thing that I think is worth mentioning, right? Drill Beam here says then target one face-up card on the field, negate its effects, and if you do, banish it. This banish is mandatory, so if this banish is mandatory and it's part of the effect, can this resolve at all if you are technically not allowed to banish your opponent's card? Just throwing that out there. So if Royal Decree were on the field, you probably can't just negate and then banish anything. So you can't, because you can't banish, you can't negate, I think. That's probably how this one works, right? And does that apply to something like a Allied Code Talker at Ignister as well? Because it's mandatory, I believe that this isn't actually activatable, right? To negate if the card can't be banished. So yeah, kind of forgot about that. And then for destruction effect, like Baron, I can't think of anything like this either. If we have like just protection, then like if this card would be destroyed, do X instead, it would still negate. But if our card was like indestructible to begin with, actually, like we'll go with Dragoon. Are you legally able to still like Baron effect onto this, despite it not being destructible by card effects? This destruction effect being mandatory? Well, with Raigeki, you can activate Raigeki even if your opponent's monsters cannot be destroyed. Would just negate and then not banish. With Drill Beam, how's this work? I'm getting like amnesia, but I'm pretty sure with Drill Beam specifically, you can't. Maybe with Ally Good Talker at Ignister, it would work differently. Yeah. The game is already complicated, so if you kind of threw this in, you can see how it kind of complicates things further. And I mean, it would be interesting at least, and kind of mix things up a little for the people that already play Yu-Gi-Oh! Not really helpful to those that don't play already. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.